Hello, hello. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. How are you? Good evening.
Good evening, teacher.
Hello, Rene. Hello,
Hello, teacher.
Barbara. Hello, Larissa. How are you?
Very good. You?
Excellent. Me mojé todo. Por eso vengo tarde, porque venía en la moto y todo me mojé. Lo bueno que no se me apagó la moto y llegué bien.
Eso es lo bueno.
Ya, porque está cayendo aquí en San Salvador. ¿Quién vive en San Salvador de ustedes?
Yo, teacher.
Pues ustedes, vaya, el mismo trueno lo acabo de escuchar, el que estoy
Sí,
escuchando yo aquí.
sí.
Está cayendo con tocho.
Se va a enfermar, teacher.
Ya, eso sí, porque gran mojada que me acabo de dar. ¿Alguien me puede hacer el favor de compartir el link de la plataforma en el WhatsApp, por favor? Que me han dado una computadora nueva y no tengo mis toolbars aquí. All right, tell me what information you remember about the previous class. ¿Qué información se acuerdan de la clase anterior?
Sports and seasons.
Repeat.
Sports and seasons.
Sports and seasons. Okay, can you give me an example of sports and seasons?
In the spring, people play golf.
All right, very good. In the spring, people play golf. Okay, can somebody give me another example using the sports and seasons? ¿Alguien me puede dar otro ejemplo utilizando the seasons? For example, my sister plays tennis in the spring. ¿Alguien me puede dar otro ejemplo?
For example, I play hockey in winter.
That's right. I play hockey in the winter is correct. Okay, let me see. Give me one moment. Online at English. .net. Online at inglescorporativo.net, and the password is INGL1. Okay. What email or password incorrect? Okay, one moment. No me puedo loguear acá. Ruben 713 at gmail.com. All right. What section in the platform is everybody working on? ¿En qué sección de la plataforma van ahorita?
Um,
5.1.
5.1. That's right. Okay. Ya me acordé. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom. Gmail.com. Login. This account has been temporarily logged due to excessive login failures. Try again later. Oh, this is crazy. Se me trabó la plataforma. That's like that. All right, so I have to wait a couple of minutes in order for me to be able to access my platform. So we're going to be practicing fluency. Now for the fluency, we're going to be going to conversation questions for the ESL classroom. And the topic is going to be related to comparatives. Los voy a poner en silencio porque se escucha bastante interferencia. Mute all. Yes. All right. So for the first activity we're going to be practicing with today is going to be a speaking activity. We're going to be looking at conversation for the nation, for the English communication in the Salvadorian nation. Are you ready?
Yes, I
All
am
right.
ready.
Okay, let's make it happen. Hey, how are you, Nicolas?
How are you, teacher?
Very good. Ready for action like Jesse Jackson.
My partners.
Everybody is doing good in the hood because today is Monday and they are ready to party. How often do you? So we're going to be looking at questions relating to how often do you to practice the adverbs of frequency. Are you ready? I'm going to share the questions in the what's in the Zoom chat. I'm going to share the questions in the Zoom chat. Repeat, please. How often do you travel?
How
How
often do you
often do you travel?
How often do you wake up in the middle of the night?
How often do you wake up of the middle of the night?
How often do you go to the dentist?
How often do
How
you
often do you go to the
go to the
dentist?
How often do you go to church?
how
How
often
often do you
go
go to
to church?
church?
How often do you eat candies?
How
How
often
often
do
do
you
you
eat
eat
candy?
candies?
How often do you go to the doctor?
How
How
often
often do you go to the
go to the
doctor?
doctor?
How often do you say I love you to your parents?
How often do you say I love you of the parents?
How often do you take your English book to study?
How
How
often do you take it
take
the
English book to
English
study?
studying?
How often do you practice sports?
How
How
often do you
often do you
practice
practice
sport?
sports?
How often do you brush your teeth?
How
How
often
often
do
do
you
you
brush
brush
your
your
teeth?
teeth?
How often do you listen to music?
How
How often do
often
you
do you
listen to
listen to music?
music?
How often do you read?
How
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 often
often
do
do
you
you read?
read?
How often do you go to the shopping mall?
How
How
often do
often
you
do you go to the
go to the
shopping mall?
shopping mall?
How often do you buy clothes?
How
How
often do you
often do
buy
you buy
clothes?
clothes?
How often do you eat fast food?
How
How
often do you
often do
eat
you
fast
eat fast
food?
food?
How often do you have English classes?
How
How
often do you
often do
have English
you
classes?
have in this class?
How often do you go out with your friends?
How
How
often
often do
you
you
go
go
out
out with
with
your
your
friends?
friend?
How often do you go to the movies?
How
How
Often
often
do
do
you
you
go to the movies?
out?
How often do you go for a walk?
How
How
often do you
often
go
do you
for a
go for
walk?
a walk?
How often do you use the internet?
How
How
often do
often
you
do
use
you
the
use
internet?
internet? Internet.
All right, so at this moment, we're going to take a couple of minutes and I would like for you to work in pairs and practice the conversation. Does anybody have any questions referring to the questions? ¿Alguien tiene alguna pregunta sobre la pregunta? ¿Alguna pregunta sobre las preguntas? Somebody?
No, teacher.
All right, so at this moment, I'm going to put everybody in pairs and I would like for you to ask the question and answer the question. One student is going to ask the question, the other student is going to respond to the questions. Do you understand?
Teacher, for example of the answer for the number one question.
Okay, how often do you travel? I hardly ever travel. I hardly ever travel.
I hardly ever travel.
Or I never travel.
Okay.
Or I sometimes travel. Or I usually travel. All right, any more questions? Somebody have another question? Okay, so
Okay.
we have Blanca Bonilla is going to work with Eric Cuellar. Carlos Carvajal is going to work in pairs with Miguel Flores. Nicolás is going to work with Sandra. Larissa is going to work with Rene. Barbara is going to work with Francisco. Are you ready?
Ready.
All
Ready.
right, let's do it. And action. Vámonos.
Ready.
Edwin Mendoza.
Oh, teacher.
¿Qué pasó, Edwin? ¿Por qué no entró?
Uh,
Ok, ahorita lo voy a poner con Blanca y Eric.
me voy conectando, mister.
Ok, ahorita lo pongo con Blanca y Eric.
Ay, no.
Okay. How often do you
Ay,
doing this?
¿cómo?
How often?
Go to the doctor.
How often do you take your English book to study?
I usually take English book to study.
How often do you practice sport?
I'm sometimes practice sports.
Okay. How often do you brush your teeth?
I usually brush my teeth.
How often do you listen to music?
I sometimes listen to music.
How often do you go to the shopping mall?
I sometimes go to the shopping mall.
How often do you buy clothes?
I usually buy clothes.
How often do you have English classes?
I usually have English class on the week.
Okay. How often do you go to the movies?
I hardly ever go to the movies.
How often do you go for a walk?
I usually go for a walk on the park.
How often do you use the internet?
I usually use the internet.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. How often do you travel?
I never travel.
How do you often wake up in the middle of the night?
I wake up in the middle of the night because uh, I, I because I need the bathroom.
Okay. How often do you go to the dentist?
Oh, I hardly ever go to the dentist.
Okay. How often do you go to the church?
All Sunday, always go to the church.
Okay. How do you often eat candies?
I sometimes eat candies.
How often do you go to the doctor?
Usually go to the doctor.
How often do you say I love you to your parents?
I always say I love you, my parents.
How often do you take your English book to study?
I sometimes take my English book to study.
Okay. How often do you practice sport?
Ooh, I hardly ever practice a sport.
Okay. How often do you brush your teeth?
I always brush your teeth.
No, I always brush my teeth.
Excuse me,
Mhm.
my teeth.
Okay. How often do you listen to music?
I sometimes listen to the music.
No decimos to the music, decimos to music.
To music.
To music. Ujú. All right, los voy a cambiar de pareja, guys, porque tengo varios que van llegando y hay varios que se han quedado afuera. Así que vamos a recrear los grupos en este momento, ¿ok?
Okay.
En este momento, ¿tienen alguna pregunta acerca de las preguntas o cómo responder alguna pregunta? ¿Alguien tiene pregunta?
No.
No questions? Nobody? Ok,
No question.
vamos a continuar. Vamos a esperar a que regresen todos nuevamente al chat room. Y quiero ver...
Teacher, yo no puedo ver las preguntas.
¿Por qué no las puede ver?
No sé, fíjese que
How often?
Y ya chequeó
abro
el Zoom,
el
ya lo
chat.
chequeó. Ajá.
Sí, pero no sé por qué no las puedo ver.
Ah, ok. Ahorita se las mando, deme un
Al
minuto.
WhatsApp se podrá.
Claro que sí. Ok, aquí
Gracias.
las mandé al Zoom nuevamente y aquí van al WhatsApp en este momento. Ahí van. ¿Le cayeron?
Ahora sí. Sí, gracias.
Ok. Guys, yo lastimosamente no puedo abrir la plataforma porque se me laqueó muchos, muchos intentos, así que si usted puede trabajar en la plataforma, hágalo. Por lo contrario, vamos a estar acá. All right, vamos a recrear los grupos nuevamente. Recreate all groups. Ok, voy a poner a Edwin Mendoza con Francisco. Bárbara va a trabajar con Sandra.
Teacher,
Mande.
eh, necesito retirarme de la clase yo, así que no puedo continuar.
Ah,
Para
ok.
solicitarle permiso ahí, ¿verdad?
Ok, ¿qué le pasó?
No, la situación aquí, que necesito hacer un trabajito.
Ah, ok, ok. Ah, pues voy a poner, lo había puesto con Miguel, así que voy a poner a Carlos con Miguel.
Sí, así que le solicito permiso ahí y las disculpas del caso.
Ok, don't worry about it. Nos conectamos mañana. Trate
Ok,
de avanzar en la plataforma lo más que pueda.
ok, gracias.
Ok, talk to you tomorrow. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Ok, vamos a poner a Edwin Mendoza con Francisco Rodríguez. Vamos a poner a Barbara with Sandra. Nicolás va a trabajar con Larisa. Carlos Carvajal va a trabajar con Miguel Flores.
Ok, seguimos, Miguel.
Perdón. Woo. Ay, qué frío. All right. And thank you. And let's go right now. Nos vamos. Presionan join o entrar a la plataforma.
I hardly ever uh,
All right,
clap.
Francisco, work in pairs with Edwin.
Okay. How often do you wake up in the middle of the night?
I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night.
How often do you go to dentist?
I sometimes go to the dentist.
How often do you go to shore?
I always go to the church.
How often do you eat candies?
I hardly ever eat candy.
How often do you go to the doctor?
I sometimes go to the doctor.
How often do you say I love you to your parent?
I always say love you to my parents.
How often do you take your English book to study?
I sometimes take my English book to study.
How often do you practice sport?
I sometimes practice sports.
How often do you brush your teeth?
I always brush my teeth.
How often do you listen to music?
I sometimes listen music.
How often do you read?
I always read.
How often do you go to the shopping mall?
I sometimes go to the shopping mall.
How often do you buy clothes?
I sometimes buy clothes.
How often do you eat fast food?
I sometimes eat fast food.
How often do you have English class?
I sometimes have English class.
How often do you go out with your friend?
I sometimes go out with my friends.
How often do you go to the movies?
I sometimes go to the movies.
How often do you go for a walk?
I always go for a walk.
How often do you use the internet?
I always use internet.
Okay.
Me pregunto yo.
Pardon.
How often do you travel?
I usually go to travel.
How often do you wake up in the middle of the night?
Allí no vamos a decir go to travel. Vas a decir I often travel.
Okay, okay.
Ujú.
How often do you wake up in the middle of the night?
I sometimes wake up in the middle of the night.
How often do you go to the dentist?
I hardly.
How often do you use English book to study?
I usually take my English book to study.
How often do you practice a sport?
I usually practice sport on Wednesday.
Okay. How often do you brush your teeth?
I always brush my teeth.
How often do you listen to music?
I sometimes listen to music.
How often do you read?
I sometimes read.
How often do you go to the shopping mall?
I hardly ever go to the shopping mall.
How often do you buy clothes?
I sometimes go buy clothes.
How often do you eat fast food?
I hardly ever eat fast food.
How often do you have English classes?
All right, let me have 2 volunteers, please. 2 volunteers, please. Ask and respond to the question. Let me have Carlos Carvajal and Barbara. Carlos, ask the questions, and Barbara, respond to the question, please. Carlos Carvajal, ask the
Okay.
questions, and Barbara, respond to the questions, please.
Okay, Barbara, how do you often you travel?
I never travel.
How do you often go to the church?
I never go to the church.
How often do you go to the doctor?
I hardly ever go to the doctor.
Okay, how often do you take your English book to study?
I hardly ever take my English book to study.
All right, thank you. Now, Barbara, ask the question. Carlos Carvajal, respond to the question.
Okay. How often do you practice sport?
I usually practice sport on Wednesday.
How often do you eat fast food?
I hardly ever eat fast food.
How often do you go out with your friends?
I hardly ever go out with my friends.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Now we're going to go ahead and move forward, and we're going to be working on the platform. Now, in the previous class, we were looking at this information right here. Do you remember section 5? Does everybody remember section 5? ¿Se acuerdan la parte 5? Sección 5.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to go to, okay, we finished I love sports. We finished this section, I love sports. Right? What sports does Mercy play? Mercy plays baseball. Where does she play? She plays at school. Ok, todos terminaron esta actividad en esta sección 5.3. ¿Todos hicieron las oraciones?
Sí, teacher.
Sí? Okay. All right, we're going to continue at this moment with the next section. The next section is going to be the knowledge check instructions. Complete the conversation with the correct WH question words. Instrucciones. Complete la conversación con la palabra WH correcta. Let's look at the first one. It says, TV program.
What it is,
Football.
teacher?
TV program, football.
Okay, okay. What it is, teacher, what activity is this?
This is activity 5.4, knowledge check. Instructions. Complete the conversation with the correct WH question words. Instrucciones. Complete la conversación con la palabra WH correcta. So in this picture, we can see a couple of guys, young guys, and they are watching the football game. Conversation number 1. Repeat. I watch sports on television every weekend.
I watch sport on television every weekend.
Very good. One more time. I watch sports on television every weekend.
I watch sports on television every weekend.
Excellent. Really?
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 Mhm.
What sports do you like to watch?
What sports do you like to watch?
Do you like to watch?
Soccer. It's my favorite.
Soccer is my
my
favorite.
Now you're going to select, do you usually watch soccer? You're going to say, what do you usually watch soccer? When do you usually watch soccer? Who
When?
do you usually watch soccer? Where do you usually watch soccer? Or how do you usually watch soccer? What is your answer?
When do you usually watch soccer?
When.
No creo que sería when, porque la primera oración dice, I watch sports on television every weekend. So, when responde la pregunta cuándo. Y aquí él está explicando que es cada fin de semana.
What do you usually watch?
When do you usually watch soccer?
No, no, when,
Where?
no, porque when está expresando aquí every weekend.
Sin embargo, me la marcó positiva.
Ajá.
Ah,
La
¿en
marca
serio?
correcta. La marca correcta, teacher.
Ah, ok. Bueno, si el sistema la marca correcta, esa es, pero ya respondió la pregunta porque aquí dice every weekend. Ok. ¿Ya la hicieron todas?
Sí, yo sí.
Sí.
Ok. All right. Barbara, hágame la otra. On Sunday afternoons and...
Where do you usually watch it at home?
All right. Carlos Carvajal, conversation number 2.
Okay. How often do you go bike riding?
How often do you go bike riding? Very good. How often? The next one, Larissa, letter B.
Let it be.
Re really, where do you go?
Okay, really? Where do you go?
You go. When do you go?
When do you go? All right. The next one, please, for me, Francisco Rodriguez.
Hello, hello.
Usually at about 1 o'clock.
Oh, who do you usually?
All right. Who do you usually go with? My sister. Come with us next time. Excellent. So all of them are correct. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions related to these questions? Questions related to these questions?
No, teacher.
All right, let us move forward then. We're going to be looking at the next activity, which is activity 5.5, lesson objective. By the end of this class, you will learn to sound natural when using can and can't. Al final de esta clase, ustedes aprenderán a sonar natural cuando usen puedo y no puedo. Pronunciation, can and can't. All right, so at this moment, we're going to watch this video about different rules for using can and can't. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it.
In this class, you'll learn to sound natural when using can and can't. Let's start by listening to the pronunciation of can and can't.
Can and can't. Notice the pronunciation of can and can't. I can act, but I can't sing very well.
This is a very simple pronunciation. If you notice the positive statement, I can act. Above the word, you can see how that is pronounced. Can, as the pronunciation symbol. On the other hand, the negative statement is pronounced differently. We will pronounce it as can't. Another tip that I would like to mention here is when it comes to negative statements which are contracted, we can also follow this simple rule. If there's a contraction which ends in nt, you can think of extending that n. Let me illustrate that. I can't sing very well. This trick can also help with pronunciation. English pronunciation is not an easy topic and it requires a lot of listening and practicing. I would like to encourage you to practice these two simple phrases. Practice by listening and repeating. Do this several times until you feel like it's not difficult for you.
All right, so at this moment, I would like for everybody to go down here in this section. Okay, I see that Yesenia Campos already finished the activity. I can play basketball, but I can't play golf. I can sing, but I can't dance. Este I tiene que ir en mayúscula y este I tiene que ir en mayúscula también. You can cook, but you can't sing. He can read English. English debería de ir mayúscula, but he can't speak. Este E en el speak no va ahí. She can drive a car. Ahí sería a car. But she can't drive a motorcycle. Ahí le faltó el a. I can ride a horse. Ahí le falta el a, no el to. But I can't milk a cow. Y aquí sería una mayúscula I. My mother can paint, but she can't act. My son can draw, but he can't paint very well. My brother can fix computers, but he can't fix cars. I can swim, but I can't surf. Ok, le voy a dar estos ejemplos. Quiero que escriban por lo menos 10 oraciones utilizando el can y el can't, así como los ejemplos que les he puesto acá. Do you have any questions? Does anybody have any questions at this moment? Questions? Anybody? Questions? Questions with somebody?
I don't
All right.
question.
You may begin. You have 10 minutes. 10 minutes to finish this activity. When you finish, raise your hand. Cuando termine, levante la mano.
Teacher, una pregunta.
Yes.
El verbo can se está utilizando como un auxiliar.
Correcto.
En tercera persona no se le agrega ese al verbo principal.
No,
Como,
no, porque cuando usas el auxiliar can, ese cambia la regla del verbo, así que no se aplica el tercer persona por el auxiliar can.
ok.
Pero
Thank
si
you,
no
teacher.
estuviera el auxiliar can, sí, tiene que usar la S en tercer persona.
Ok, thank you.
Teacher, entonces solamente con la contracción can. Si
Ajá.
yo pusiera cannot,
También es
siempre
correcto.
la S. ¿Ah?
También es correcto. Cannot, solo que no llevaría el apóstrofe.
Ajá, correcto. No le pone la S tampoco.
Not. Cannot. Y no se le pone la S al verbo porque tenés el auxiliar can.
Ok.
Ujú.
Thank you, teacher.
Yes. Is anybody finished? Finished?
No, teacher.
No, teacher.
Ok, ¿cuánto tiempo más necesitan? Unos 2 minutos.
What?
How much more time do you need?
5 minutes.
Five more minutes.
5 more minutes.
Okay. You have 5 more minutes.
My brother can pay computer that
Ok, veo que Carlos, Sandra, Eric y Yesenia ya terminaron. A los demás les queda de tarea. All right, we're going to look at section 5.7, lesson objective. By the end of this class, you will learn how to ask and answer question using can for ability. Al final de esta clase, ustedes aprenderán cómo formular y responder preguntas usando puedo para las habilidades.
Hi everyone, in this class you'll learn to ask and answer questions using can for ability. Let's get started by listening to a conversation titled, I can't sing very well. This conversation illustrates how this topic is used in a real life setting.
I can't sing. Oh, look. There's a talent contest on Saturday. Let's enter.
I can't enter a talent contest. What can I do?
You can sing really well.
Oh, thanks. Well, you can too.
Oh, no. I can't sing at all. But I can play the piano.
So maybe we can enter the contest.
Sure. Why not?
Okay. Practice tomorrow.
Now let's analyze the examples.
¿Alguien tiene alguna consulta o pregunta acerca del vocabulario en el diálogo?
Teacher,
Yes.
¿cómo se pronuncia donde dice, oh no, I can't sing at all?
Oh no, I can't sing at all.
At all.
At all.
At all, okay.
Oh no, I can't sing at all. All right, quiero que se graben en el vocabulary y lo suben a la plataforma. Eso les queda de tareas.
Es el diálogo.
That's right. En vocabulary.
Okay.
All right, guys. See you tomorrow. Have a good night.
Bye bye, teacher.
Good
Have a
night.
nice
Bye-bye. Have a good night.